Welcome back to the Women's Lounge. It's Halloween week, and I got to tell you, it's scary out there, but it's not just scary as in Halloween. We're talking about ghouls that are not on your lawns and not the plastic skeletons. It's terrifying. We are on the 28th day of the government shutdown, 28 days. So nearly a month of people living without paychecks, people that live paycheck to paycheck, people that are have missed maybe their car payment, their rent payment, don't know where their health care funding's coming from, or just basic government services. So families are hurting. Small businesses are stretched thin, and millions of Americans are stuck waiting while the parties and the politicians play games. So that's what's happening. That's what's happening at the White House. What they're really doing and how this all is unfolding is literally you can't make this up. So as we speak, they are bulldozing or have finished bulldozing the east wing of the White House to build wait for it, to build a golden ballroom. Yeah, because nothing says the party of the working people for the people like a $250 million addition to the White House, which will be the Golden Ballroom. It's a 90,000 square foot ballroom, big enough to host up to 650 guests, because the one previously could only host about 200 billionaires, I'm saying, in my opinion. So while the rest of the country is wondering if they can afford groceries, and I don't know about you, but do you remember the commercials that talked about they couldn't afford eggs during the past administration and how they were going to do right by the people? Well, we're still waiting. Most people can't afford groceries. So the current president, the president claims that the ballroom is being funded by a donor. A donor. Since when do we build parts of the White House like it's a GoFundMe campaign? I understand the inauguration was paid for by donors, but now we're really talking about donors building the White House, part of the White House. What does that look like? Since when is democracy sponsored by billionaires? Maybe it has been for a bit and we just haven't looked, but there we go. It used to be millionaires. Now we're into the billionaires. The millionaires are just too lowly. Now we're at billionaires. And as you know, most of the billionaires have a few things in mind, which means controlling democracy. That's what's on the line here. So speaking of donors, donations, and all of that, the Pentagon, yes, the Pentagon, led by Mr. Pete Hegseth, just accepted a $130 million donation. So another donor has come through to cover military back pay during the shutdown. Yes, another donor. But let that sink in. The supposed superpower, the United States is considered a superpower. So the superpower of the world is accepting and taking donations to pay its soldiers, not funding them through Congress, not negotiating in good faith, but accepting charity, accepting donations to be able to afford back pay or pay for its soldiers. And I don't know about you, but that does not speak like superpower to me. This is a party that is always afraid of socialism and is always afraid of the supposed handouts, as if people didn't pay into taxes, as if people aren't paying into a system that should be taking care of them. But they're always afraid of charity, but not afraid of donations in the hundreds of millions of dollars when it behooves them. So make it make sense. That's what someone sent me. Make it make sense. So how can we call this party the party of the working class when you are building a ballroom for galas and billionaires and treating the military like it's a nonprofit with a tip jar? How can we its citizens sit there, watch them lie, and brag about what they are doing, right? Brag about what they are building a golden ballroom as people don't know if their SNAP benefits are coming in, if their health care is coming up, if they're going to be furloughed or laid off. Seems to me like the party of billionaires and the party that doesn't care, right? So let's all take a breather, but let's bring everybody in. Why can't they just do their job? Come in, talk about what's at stake, what we need to do, right, to make sure that the government reopens. And all of this is when both parties are really set on not talking to each other, but realistically what happens is it hurts the people. And there's only one party that is building a golden room, and there's only one party that is not willing to fund health care, and that's not a party of the working class. So all of this is batshit crazy, as I would call it. So we're not talking about ghosts and ghouls. We're talking about the government abandoning its own workers, abandoning families, and really as they sit back and still collect the paycheck. Because right now, the only ones collecting the paycheck are the senators, the congressmen and congresswomen. They are the only ones accepting a paycheck. So it is the wealthiest of the few that are going to be okay. And we should not be okay with that. Our communities deserve better. Our communities deserve health, wealth, and they deserve to thrive. And so with that, I'm going to take a breather to introduce my guest. Yes. So my guest today is Dawn Bounds, the founder of CYFER Lab. CYFER Lab stands for Centering Youth and Families in Empowerment and Resilience. Ooh, did we ever need this? So Dr. Bounds and her team are rethinking what it means to heal beyond broken systems by focusing on youth, families, and building power at the community level. Dr. Bounds is a nurse, a scholar, a mentor, and an innovator who is blending science with justice to take on systematic racism, intergenerational trauma, and the kinds of structural violence that keep our communities from thriving. We are excited to speak to her on the research she's doing, on what she's working on. So welcome, Dr. Dawn Bounds. Welcome back. And you know it's Wednesday. We're back at the Women's Lounge. And today my guest is Dr. Dawn Bounds. I want to give a shout out and a welcome to her. We're talking today about CYFER Lab. We're talking about the incredible work that CYFER Lab is doing, how you're rethinking health, resilience, and community care. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome. Dr. Dawn, can I just call you Dawn or just
Yes,
Doctor?
yes. You can call me Dawn. That's totally fine. Thank you for the invitation and the warm welcome.
Yes, thank you for coming on. Tell us a little bit about CYFER Lab, the work that you are doing.
Yeah, yeah. So the CYFER Lab is a research lab that is focused on community engaged research. It is at the University of California, Irvine in the Sue and Bill Gross School of Nursing. And that community engaged research really focuses on youth who have been impacted by adversity and trauma and working with them and their families. And so it's all about centering youth. At the center, that's the most important part. And then supporting families to support those youth because you cannot have healthy youth without healthy families. And so we can't ignore that aspect of it. And what we do is we work side by side with youth. There's lots of young people that work in my lab with me. And so we really want to amplify their voices and focus on what makes them and keeps them healthy.
Absolutely. What inspired you to start CYFER Lab?
Wow, that's a great question. So I am originally from Chicago and I got to University of California, Irvine in 2020. And prior to coming to UCI, I had worked at Rush University. I had worked as a nurse practitioner in psychiatry, and I was working with the most marginalized youth in Chicago, most traumatized youth in Chicago. And I also was beginning a research career, and this opportunity came up for me. And I felt like, okay, let me get on the tenure track and build out a research career and make this move. I had been in Chicago all of my life. And so I decided to make the move in the middle of the pandemic. And so got here in 2020 and really wanted to focus on what I had learned in my clinical practice back in Chicago, working with youth, but working with them from the research side of things, not necessarily the practice side of things, because I felt like I could probably make more impact working in research and hopefully establishing some things that can change policy that impacts their lives. And so I got here and believe it or not, I dreamed about CYFER Lab and
Oh, I think we I'm with you. I'm originally from Chicago, and so
oh
yes,
wow.
when you said rush, I could imagine the bus I was taking down there on Halsted. Like I'm originally from Chicago, but when we talk about impacted youth, I was one of those kids that grew up in Chicago. It grew up in at the time it was Cabrini Green. It's no longer
Yes,
there, but
yes,
that's where I grew up. And when we talk about traditional health care and um woo, what has and has not worked for our youth. I think you're at the
yes.
you are at the forefront of all of that. So I want to talk a little bit about like why hasn't traditional healthcare worked and or been researched for the marginalized communities, because that's what it feels
Hmm.
like.
Yeah, for sure. Um, if I can just be blunt, the healthcare system in this country and a lot of the education is really centered by and around white men. And
Woo,
so
yes.
so when we look at that, I mean, we are a society that is not just comprised of white men. And so when you're designing healthcare systems and unfortunately in a capitalistic environment, which is
Yes.
also impacting our health and healthcare, it definitely does not consider what marginalized people need, what non-white men need to be taken care of. So that's, I mean, I got a long list, but that's probably one of the first things in terms of why it's not working.
Right. So a lot of the systems, I have done research. Most systems were built around white men, from
Yeah,
streets to healthcare to even the design of grocery stores, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's who the systems were built for. And so that's why it takes folks like you to make sure that the research is appropriate for the rest of us. So I
Mhm.
do want to look at, when we talk about like the whole holistic community power and healing, because I see that in Cypher Labs. I attended a talk where they talked about it, and I just thought this is something that has been needed for so long, and centering youth and families, like you said, it's not just attending to youth, it is holistically attending to the family. So I wanted to talk about what made you think to start there, to start with youth and then expanding to the entire family, because that's, I mean, I grew up that way where it's like it's not just the issue with the
Mhm.
child, it's what else is happening.
Yes, for sure. So I would say that that thought occurred to me a long time ago when I first became a nurse. I became a nurse and a really long time ago. And and we I was working child and adolescent inpatient psychiatry. So these were kids that were hospitalized because they were at risk of either harming themselves or someone else. So, very, very sick kids in terms of their mental health. And one of the things that always fascinated me was we would take care of that kid and would get that child stabilized. And there was some work with the family, but in my opinion, I felt like there could be more happening with the family because what would happen is we would get that child stabilized and then they would go home and they would come back. And so I'm like, it can't just be us restructuring the environment, us stabilizing medication. We have to do more. We have to also look at the environment that they're in and how that is impacting their behavior and emotions, etc. So that's where it first came from. So this is throughout my entire nursing career. I'm like, we have to focus on families as well. And unfortunately, in many of our communities, that focus has been blame. That focus has been, systems that intrude in the family and blame parents instead
I
of.
almost shame them, like,
Yes,
"Why don't you
yeah,
have these resources?" It's like, because we don't." So, yeah, blame I would say blame and shame.
yeah.
I see it, I see it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, why not support them? If we want the kids to do better, we want children to do better, we have to make sure that their parents are okay too.
Absolutely. And I think no one checks in on the parents, right? I think that we send our kids to school and the school should handle it, but it's like, okay, what is going on in the household? How can we all care for the entire family? And with that, I want to talk about how can caregivers and families help young people thrive? Like, how can caregivers also talk about the mental health aspect, again, without the blame or shame. Things just happen.
Yeah. So one of the things that my research focuses on is adolescent self-regulation. And self-regulation is something that is developed throughout childhood and adolescence, but there's this aspect of co-regulation that contributes to that adolescence regulation, which means they have to experience other regulated people around them to really build self regulation that is going to create resilience to adversity. And so, one thing families and caregivers need to do is they also got to work on themselves, right? Like, there has to be some focus on them being mentally healthy, them, learning self regulation skills. And so, some of what I do is teach not only that young person self regulation skill, but I teach their caregiver self regulation skill, right? Because you are only going to be as good to that child as you are to yourself.
Absolutely. And I go with my grandma, rest in power. She always had a saying of be gentle with yourself, I mean, because the world's gonna beat you up. And so if you're
Yes.
doing the same thing, that's not helpful. So I do think I love the term of co-regulating.
Yeah.
I'm high ADHD. My one of my oldest kids is too, and we get it. We're like, okay, self-regulate. And when he was little, we were looking at self-regulation. It's like, no, co-regulation, because if I'm up here, he's
Yeah.
tends to come up here as well. Um,
Yeah.
so I love that. I love that. I do want to talk about also CYFER mentoring students into health careers
Phew.
and why is that so important? I mean, I think I know why, but why is that so important?
Well, I think we just came full circle, right? Like, why is it important for people that look like me, and have lived experience that I've had to do research and to be in healthcare? Part of the mentoring CYFER Lab, I intentionally reach out to marginalized students to be a part of the lab, right? And I intentionally say, this is what I'm working on, and we all have trauma and adversity, but I want you to be a part of this lab and a part of this research because you have something to offer. And part of the reason for that is because then we can change the way healthcare and policy is currently being implemented because it does not serve us. We have to build systems that serve us.
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about representation matters, I remember the first time taking my parents to a doctor's appointment where the nurse spoke Spanish and I was, in my 30s where I was like, "Oh, whoa, we made it," right? But
Yes.
I was like, "Okay, wait, we still need more," right? So I get it. Also with policy, I think that once we, also talk about policy, do you see any barriers for students, and how can we break down those barriers for the students trying to enter these fields?
Yeah, so I will say I'm a first generation college student, and a lot of members of the CYFER Lab are also first generation college students. So they don't know what they don't know, right? Like, I'm a first generation faculty member. There's folks that parents and grandparents were faculty members. It makes a difference because you're learning as you go, and you might not have all of the tips and tricks and shortcuts that generationally has been passed down for other folks. And so that's one disadvantage is that there is some generational knowledge that we are just building.
Yes, yes. Can you give me a success story of a student you've mentored?
Have so many. I have
Well,
so
maybe
many.
combine them. Good, good. That's what
So
I like to hear.
yes, yes. So what I will say is that I tell my students, once you're with me for life. And so that's the beautiful thing about CYFER Lab is I still have students who have graduated who come back and want to contribute or come back for like a social because we stay connected and things like that. I work with all types of health sciences students. So people that want to be nurses, people that want to be physicians, people that want to be nurse practitioners, public health professionals, psychologists, and many of them start with me in their undergraduate program. They graduate, and then many of them, I can't tell you how many letters of recommendations I'm writing to
Mhm.
get them into graduate school. So, one of the success stories is that they continue their education. They don't stop at that one degree, they want more. And so, the other piece I'll say is that they consider being a researcher. I wasn't
Absolutely.
introduced to research in undergrad. I wasn't introduced until I had a master's degree. I was a nurse practitioner. I'm
Well,
like, wait, there's research? I can do this?
and who's
Um,
doing the research?
and who's doing it, right? And so, like, there's students that's like, I think I can do this. I think I want to do research, which is a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, right? So now we're building scientists who have these lived experiences, who have the experience of working in Cypher Lab. And these are people that want to go out and be in the community and change their own communities. And it's a beautiful thing.
Definitely, we need more of that. I think the supportive environment, the storytelling, creativity, supports healing and
Yeah.
resilience. I think when we talk about resilience, we talk about holding on to pain, but resilience is, I think, continuing to do the work even when it gets difficult. And I'm seeing post COVID, I'm seeing that some of our students are not necessarily as resilient, or they don't know how. So I do think that Cypher Lab is critical with all of that and building resilience. So I'm going to ask you, looking ahead, and I know you said you dreamed about Cypher Lab. What do you, where do you see it in the next 5 years, and how can we all help?
Oh my goodness. Well, one way to help is that be open to research. Um, I'm often recruiting for research studies, and I will say community engaged recruitment is one of the hardest parts. Is convincing people that this is something that could benefit the community, right? But we need the data, which means somebody has to step up and say, I'm going to participate and I'm going to answer these questions and I'm going to try out this new intervention that you're offering. So, that first and foremost is to be sure to keep an open mind when you're approached about doing research. Of course, you want to do research that you're comfortable with and that aligns with your interests and perhaps what the change you want to see. But also look at what you might benefit from by
Mhm.
participating in the research. Because I try, at least for my work, is to make it beneficial to the participants. So that's first and foremost. Um, that success as a researcher, me recruiting and me collecting data, propels Cypher Lab forward and helps me get more grant funding to do more research so that we can grow. A lot of volunteers work with CYFER Lab, but I would love to pay students when I can, and I would love to pay people that are doing this important work. And that takes money. That takes grant money, and so that's the other piece is help me be successful with the research. Sign up.
Yes, so sign up for research, be a participant. I would say be a participant because that's the only way we get the data to continue to build systems that work for us, for people that look like us, that have our
Exactly.
experiences. So I want to thank you for joining us. A call to action, I would say, is to get involved. What do you want your listeners to get involved? You can count on me for research.
Yeah,
Um,
share
Can we
the
point
share
them
the
to your
research.
website? Can we donate? What can we do to help you be successful?
All of the above. So we do have a donation website on the School of Nursing, and you can say that you want that money to go towards the Cypher Lab specifically. So UCI Sue and Bill Gross School of Nursing's website has a button that you can click and donate, and you just want to put in your notes that it's for the Cypher Lab. So
That's
that's
it. So we're
that's
gonna
one
we're
thing.
gonna we're gonna link this podcast to the donation website, of course, and we're going to ask you to sign up for research, but more than anything, continue to help fund this research because we need all of us involved. Participation matters, representation matters. Thank you for joining us today. We will make sure we put the link to CYFER Labs. Dr. Don Bounds, thank you for joining us and continuing to do this work. Coming up next, what day are we on the government shutdown? We're going to talk about a few critical races that are out there for election week. Here we go. All right, we're going to wind it down here. So election day is November 4th, but I'm calling it election week as we've got a few critical races on the ballot from California. So yes, on Prop 50 in California to the mayoral race in New York and Minneapolis. And we're hearing a lot about the New York race against Cuomo, against Mandami, who's behind it. What are folks afraid of? Both New York and Minneapolis have two candidates on the ballot who people think are far left or socialists. So we'll see where it ends up. New York, of course, has been at the forefront of the news on that. And then we're looking at the governor's races. So we're looking at a governor's race in Virginia as well as New Jersey. So they both have female candidates, which is exciting to see. No matter what party, we want to see more women running for office. So in Virginia, I'm for Abigail Spanberger. I think she represents Virginia well. In New Jersey, Mikey. So I do think we are headed for more women into office. But that brings us to a problematic part. That brings us to the Justice Department announcing last Friday that it will be sending monitors to polling sites. It will be sending monitors specifically to California and New Jersey. And the question that I have is, who's afraid of the vote? Are they afraid of voters actually turning out? Or is the goal to monitor these elections, is the goal to intimidate? So instead of protecting people's right to vote, we are looking at intimidation. What looks like intimidation. And we know history and we know that intimidation at the ballot box, we know what it looks like. We know what it feels like. So when the government normalizes consistent presence on the ground in cities and states, consistent monitors, when they send military, federal agents into our civic spaces, it starts to look less like democracy. It starts to look more like a dictatorship. So we're hoping this isn't the new norm, and we should not be accepting this as the new norm, because where was that energy in 2020 with fake electors? Where was that energy around, yes, there were fake electors. Have we forgotten about that? So more around looking at what that feels like, not normalizing it as we head into the 2026 midterms, as we head into the federal elections of a new president in 2028. So I think this is setting a precedent. And it's a dangerous precedent, as I would say, because the continued presence of government oversight, the continued presence of the government on our streets, at our polling places, it's seeping into our daily life, and we start to feel apathetic about it. But realistically, it starts to become the new norm. The fear and control over its citizens starts to become the new norm. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that this is not normal. This is not normal. The Department of Justice should not be sending folks out to monitor elections. So the truth is we cannot let normalize this, but we also cannot let it demoralize us. We've got to make sure that we show up to vote no matter who's there. We cannot let it stop us. So I'm going to say, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, wherever you can go out and vote, no matter where you're at, go and do that. So don't fall for the tricks. Don't fall for the intimidation. Voting is your right. Yeah. And our power really, really is in our voices, in our communities, and yes, in our votes. If they were not afraid of us turning out in numbers, they would not be sending out these supposed monitors. So let's get out there and vote, stand in line, do what you have to do, take a friend, remind your neighbors, let folks know where you're at. These races matter. The mayor in New York matters, the governor in Virginia, the governor in New Jersey matters. So making sure we are out there. We've got this. Your voice matters. Thank you for joining me. I'm Emiliana and your host, the host of the Women's Lounge. Please share this episode, download, keep spreading the word, and let's keep it up. Because when we stand together, when we fight together, we win. All right. See you next time.